As Paige Bueckers approaches 2,000 career points, how will a full complement of players shape the Huskies down the stretch? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate all of your support and thank you. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn women's and men's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. And to show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping underserved kids go to UConn games they otherwise would not be able to. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, leave a review. Hopefully it's a good review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Well, from the FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. From the first whistle to the final drive, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's jump right into the show. I'm going to bring in my Friday co-host, T. Baker, who is a beat reporter for The Next and also a contributor to the Hoops Capital of the World Substack. T, Paige is back. She is 6 points away from 2,000. She had I thought it was an interesting game against St. John's. I talked to Bella T, who's also one of our co-hosts earlier this week, and we kind of both thought that she'd play around 15, maybe 20 minutes, but she almost got to 23 minutes. Gino was a little tongue-in-cheek about that, about how she was on a minutes restriction. He kind of winced when she played that much. Were you surprised that she played so much in that first game back, or what does that tell you about her going down the stretch?
Well, it's good news that she can do that and not need to come out. So I think that's the first thing. It's good to see she's healthy. I think, one of the things that has always been the case with Paige is she hates being on the bench. She has always wanted to be in the game. So there's a little bit of a banter between her and Gino just about minutes. So I'm not surprised. I think that when you're the coach of this team, you want her in the game. So it's probably hard to pull her from the game too. But, I trust the training staff at UConn. I think that they're going to put her in the position. And it just is so great to see that she could play that time. And there isn't sort of an indication of a further injury.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I think we were just being I think everyone just is trying to be cautious about all of it because we want this team to be whole. And I think we're really close to Aubrey Griffin coming back. So if you get her, and then now you have all of the scorers in place and the playmakers, then this team starts to get interesting. It starts to get dangerous. So she missed a couple games. Who was do you think outside of AZ? It was probably AZ and Sarah. Like, who do you think stepped up the most?
It's been by committee. I think, that's the thing that's been interesting. And I appreciate that. I think it's like a really good sign that there's multiple players who are stepping up. We saw, I don't know the timeline exactly, but we've seen different players, Ali Zabel step up. We've seen Morgan Shelley step up. I think we've seen Caitlin Chen just really get into this good role of being a solid point guard. So what I think has been impressive, and I think what is a good sign, is that it's not just that when Paige is out, AZ has to be a hero or Sarah has to be a hero, but that like all these players are beginning to show how they can contribute on the roster, because that's the type of stuff that wins you a championship down the line. Like, you need multiple players who can step up, not just one or two when your best player's on the bench.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, the kind of the back and forth between who steps up more right now, whether it's Ali or Morgan. Morgan's had a more prominent role, obviously. She's a bigger guard. She's kind of out of position. She's playing forward a little bit to give them kind of more of a multi-dimensional lineup. So that's always been fun. But like, we are starting to see Ali get more burn here, and that's good. That's good news. Whether she scores 17 points like she did against Xavier, or she just is contributing in other ways. I think she showed that she's more than a 3-point shooter in that game. And Gino was quoted as saying, like, he's basically telling his assistants, like, I told you, like, when she gets going, she's tough to stop. So that's good news. Have you noticed kind of a similar banter with Gino and Paige to when Diana was there? Because I feel that I could feel it in the the one press conference I was in this year, and live, and I just think it's funny. Like I really think it helps team chemistry that she gives a little little gruff to him back and forth. Like it kind of humanizes him. How do you feel about that interaction between Gino and Paige, Gino and Diana?
I love the question. It's a hilarious comp. I think that Gino and Diana had just such a incredible dynamic that even recently when he won his record clinching game, she was at the game. Like I didn't see him get as emotional for any player than he did for Diana Taurasi. They just had sort of a different type of closeness that was just very special. And I think it was for a lot of reasons. Both Italian immigrants, both just kind of able to get under your skin in a lot of different ways that they kind of fire with fire. I love the comp. I do think it's a little bit different though, because I think Paige is actually like very coachable. And I think her banter is a little bit like different because she actually does like respect and take coaching from Gino where Diana didn't. I think a funnier comp to think about is like Mika Mule. She was just like a pain in the ass back to Gino. And that's kind of the dynamic that him and Diana had, but they ended up being one of the closest, on the team.
Absolutely.
So,
it's funny. It's funny too. I don't mean to cut you off. Like I actually think the comp is like just the relationships are different. Like it's to your point. Diana and Gino remind me of like an old married couple that's just like basically like everybody loves Raymond. They're constantly like at each other's throats, but in the end, they're family. They love each other, and more the Paige is more like his annoying granddaughter. Like that's kind of what I look at.
And he's changed with age, right? Like that's what's so fascinating and so entertaining about him as a coach is like, I think he's almost evolved into this like grandfatherly figure. So, but I love it. I love the banter. And I just think it adds such a fun element to covering this team.
Do you feel like we're finally at the inflection point of this team when Aubrey comes back that we can start actually, because listen, I think this team is likely going to be a Final Four team no matter what. But when you get there, those three other teams are likely all killers. So is this team fully healthy going to be up there against the South Carolinas? Because South Carolina, even though they lost Ashwin Watkins, has not looked like they've missed a beat. And there's some other dynamite players or dynamite teams that could potentially be in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about last week, South Carolina is not going to miss a beat. Like that is Dawn Staley. She has a stacked roster. They are still a threat to UConn no matter what. I mean, look, I think last year at the Final Four, I thought that if UConn had beaten Iowa, there was no chance they could have beaten South Carolina.
Right.
I feel differently about it this year. I think when we get to the Final Four, it is, it's a game of inches for a reason. Like if foul trouble, like there's so many little moments that could shape the outcome of a game, just like we saw against Iowa last year, right? That moving screen. Like there's just these moments that you can't predict. It's a bit of a toss up, but I think in this year, if those two teams faced off in the Final Four, it would be a closer contest than it was last year. And UConn, I think, could pull it off. For
sure. We didn't know each other last year, so I'm going to ask you this question. Take yourself back to that Final Four in that moment where the moving screen. Did you think it was a foul?
I'm honestly not sure because I'm not good at being a ref. And I always say that, like, I'm not a ref for a reason. And I don't know like exactly how to make that call. I've always been annoyed at the narrative of like the last call ruined it. Like it just bothers me. And it, because there's so many moments that could have changed the outcome of that game. And I think you can took that in stride. So I don't have a hot take about that because genuinely I'm not a ref and I don't know how to pretend to be one even because I can't see the moments the way some people can. But that was the call and that's how the game ended. And I think, it was really powerful to see UConn take accountability for that at the end. There wasn't this blaming of the ref. And like, I just, cause I think that's tacky at a certain point, but
yeah, no, I agree with you to a certain extent. Like, I think there's a school of thought and then we'll move on to the next segment because it's a really good one. That no one came to see that ref make that call.
Yes.
And
I do agree with that.
If anything, forget about UConn. The fans got robbed of seeing Paige take a last second shot, make or miss. Just having that opportunity was taken away.
I do.
And yes, could letter of the law, could that have been called an offensive foul? 100%. But it's like, just like you said, there's about 14,000 probably minuscule plays in a game that you could probably make a foul call on any play. So to do it at that moment was kind of like, I feel like that's like overstepping your bounds as a referee, unless someone's getting mugged.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But yeah, the call, I can't make a comment on the call. I can agree on, like, let it go in the final second.
Sure.
So the fans and all these people watching on TV get that moment. So I hear you on that.
All right. Don't come for T. He had a good take on that. I like that take. All right, we're gonna come right back and talk about what's going on. A lot of big news in women's college basketball and women's basketball as a whole professionally. So we're gonna come back and talk about that after the break. This message is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way in the action than with PrizePicks. Here's how it works. It's just more or less. And if your pick hits, you can win up to 100,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right. 100 times your money. $1 gets you 1,000, just to make a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes this season. This week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards and Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy. Plus, with PrizePicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even with one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take the game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World and the Next, and your host, Mark Zanetto, with Locked On UConn. All right, so big news in women's college basketball. First off, let's talk about I talked about this earlier in the week with Bella T, our on-campus beat reporter, as well. But how shocked did you find yourself when the report from Sportico came out that the UConn women had 3.25 million tickets sold, and outpaced 75 Division I men's teams, even before we talked about the women in the top teams that they kind of surpassed by almost 2 or 3 times? I mean, we're talking, we talked about it earlier in the week, Alabama, Oregon, LSU on the men. Like, this isn't like them outpacing, mid-major teams in the Northeast, like, Central or Sacred Heart or something like that. Like, this is, it's ridiculous in a good way. It's kind of insane. What were your thoughts?
I'm just thrilled that UConn is drawing fans like that. I think it's a testament to a lot of different things. I think it's a testament to the star power of players like Paige Bueckers and the platform that these players have, that they draw fans, not just at UConn, but, around the country. I also think that, UConn has been drawing fans. I started watching in the early 2000s. We never went to a not sold out Hartford Civic Center back in the day to see UConn on a Tuesday night against any old opponent, right? So fans show up in Connecticut, and I think that it's been a while since I've seen it on paper like that, and I think fandom did waver for a while. I think during the dark days of the AAC on some level,
yeah,
there's just a lot of bummer games, but I'm thrilled to see it, and I think it's a testament to the growth of women's basketball, but also to UConn basketball to be able to draw fans the way they have so consistently for decades now.
Yeah, what I've done a few times on this show before you started contributing is saying nationally, what took you so long? Because UConn, I'm 43 years old. I started going and watching UConn women's basketball in 1990, and when they made that first Final Four. And then just the undefeated season, the Rebecca Lobo years, Jennifer Rosati, Carol Walters, all of that. Gino, when I haven't talked to Gino personally, but when he's done reports on the investment of women's college basketball, he remember him talking about how when they went to the first Final Four, there was nobody there. There was 4 people in the media, and now it's completely different. And that's a good thing, but it's also kind of like he's also kind of an introvert where he's just like, I don't want this attention.
Yeah.
So it is interesting, and I feel like UConn has always led the way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's amazing the consistency. Like last year, a year dominated in the media, ESPN, Fox, Caitlin Clark. You know, Iowa only did 1.5 million in sales,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 1.3. It's hard to see the graph exactly, but it's almost double or triple what they were doing in South Carolina as well.
Yeah.
That was the most surprising for me. Forget about the men's stuff.
Yeah, and there was mention in there about the social media following, like that's how people consume media now. So it shows you how invested fans are in this team, whether they're physically showing up or they're following the team online.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. The Department of Education said now, actually, before we say that, the women's basketball teams are finally being paid for playing in games in the NCAA tournament in March, which is just like ridiculously long overdue. Just like the men have for years, those performance units, like when you explaining it this way, if you have like 4 or 5 teams go to a conference, like they all get performance units for wins. So if they win the national championship, they get the most. Sweet 16, they get, middle of the road. They win a game, they get whatever. But it represents revenue now that will be given to women's teams playing in the tournament starting this year. How big of a moment is that for women's basketball, especially in college?
It's huge. I mean, I've been waiting years for this announcement. I think, back, if we think about the bubble seasons, sort of, so to speak, when that inequities were put on blast, Prince kind of just filmed the weight room that was just not adequate for elite athletes. That was in San Antonio versus what was happening on the men's side. Like, I think there's been an increased attention to women's basketball on the national stage, but also especially during March Madness. They can now use the March Madness branding. I don't know if our listeners know, just even a couple years ago, they couldn't use the March Madness branding on the women's side. So it was almost as if they were intentionally trying to stifle the game. It felt like, right?
Yeah.
Because the product has always been there. That's what longtime watchers and fans have been saying. Like, the product has been there. We've just been waiting for people to catch up, like you said, and putting the game on ABC when it's the title game, allowing schools to get units. Like, if you invest in the sport, you will get further investment in the sport. So that's just where we're at now, and I'm glad finally people are catching on.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's good to kind of see these things in black and white, and also to have media outlets. I'm not trying to hey, we're the best, but to have media outlets like ours that can come and tell you what's really happening, because sometimes at the larger outlets they kind of just gloss over it and just give you the highlights. Like, for example, last year, again, in the media pushing of the Caitlin Clark story, they kind of were poo-pooing the men's tournament. The men's tournament was phenomenal, same as the women's. I just want people to love basketball, because that's my business. I love basketball. Women's, men's. There could be 3 men and 3 women playing 3-on-3 basketball in my driveway right now, and I'd go watch. So I just want people to understand, there's a lot of inequities on the women's side, especially with stuff like this. But it doesn't mean we have to pit one game versus the other. It's a beautiful sport, and we just need to all kind of come together on that. I'm going to get off my soapbox. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, but wanted to just throw that out there. What about the Department of Education saying Title IX applies to payment to athletes? This plan is huge for major college athletic departments, and how they will deal with the revenue sharing that is going to be coming down with the House settlement. Can you explain that as best as possible? I haven't really dug into the ruling or any of that nature, so I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, get ready for a lot of legal things happening around that one, because that's just the law. When we talk about the law, there's going to be litigation against that type of action. I think the easy and convenient way that schools were thinking about this was football players get the most revenue, they bring in the most revenue, but that's not what is going to fly, and that's because of Title IX. And Title IX is the reason that women's basketball is where it's at today. It's the reason why it's going to keep growing. So I was pleasantly surprised that this decision was made. How it's going to be implemented is really when the law becomes reality tested. So the law's there, but as it was the case with Title IX in the 70s, people have to comply with the law to for it to work. So like that's the piece that I wonder how they're going to enforce this. I have no idea, and I bet there's a bunch of lawyers right now doing some research on it.
Maybe we'll have to try to get a lawyer on to explain it to us, because honestly, like I could do my best to kind of look at it, but I feel like I'd be doing listeners a disservice by just kind of, like I just said, glossing over the actual big facts of it. I think for me, what's going to be interesting is what happens if someone isn't in compliance. Like what do they do? Like how do they enforce that? Like if and we're talking about like big time college football, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, Notre Dames, whatever. Because there's always, there's people always going to find loopholes.
Yeah.
So I wonder where those loopholes are going to be. And as UConn is trying to ramp up their football presence, I wonder if it puts a wrench in a lot of plans that people had, because it feels like every time people are trying to make simple decisions, the NCAA goes, no. There's nothing simple about this.
We're still here, and we're gonna jump on in, have an opinion about this.
Yeah. I honestly, it may, and this may be a beautiful thing for women's basketball and men's basketball, but for fans that like it all to be encompassing, I could definitely see a world in 5 years where football itself is just a completely separate entity in college, and everything else is like the Olympic sports in basketball. So we'll see. Should be interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's changing quickly. So we will catch up with the news as it happens live.
For sure. All right. We're going to jump to the next topic, take one quick blast break, and talk about what is Unrivaled. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. It starts tonight. The 3-on-3 basketball league started by our UConn alum, Fee and Bree. We'll talk about that coming back after this. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps you as excited about anything from overs, unders, spread, money line, whatever you want, whether you're betting your favorite team or just looking to add some excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, back on Locked On UConn with our contributor and co-host on Fridays, every Friday, T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World, and also The Next. I talked about this a little bit introing Unrivaled yesterday on the show, and mostly because it affects people who love women's basketball, but also it was co-founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. So, two people that are, Huskies that people love, who are incredible basketball players. It's debuting tonight in Miami. I believe we talked about it. It's going to be on TNT tonight, but it's also going to be streamed on Max, which I think is brilliant. And it's a 16 format, 36 WNBA players. And the best thing about this league is the way it's structured, right? From the salaries to the equity stakes. And I think what that will do is create a kind of windfall for the players that are on the ground floor, but also for the future players. I mean, Paige has already said she's going to play in it. I feel like Flau'jae Collins is already playing it. Or Flau'jae Johnson has already said she's going to play in it. So tell me about your thoughts about this and what you want to see from it.
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out to that UConn education. We got two business owners.
That's right.
That's right. Brianna Stewart. I love it. Like best friends, both parents, both business owners. Like these women are incredible. So I just want to shout out to them. And also they played each other in the finals, and then
so
just
cool.
Had around and run a business together after that contentious final. So I love it. Can't wait to see it. I mean, I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm hopeful that it's successful. It's really, really hard to start a new sports league and for it to make its way into, the national landscape. I know that there's some pressure on them to figure out how to make it have staying power. So I'm just excited to see the product. One thing that is unique is that it's 3-on-3 and it's like a modified full court. So these players are going to be running up and down that court a lot. 3-on-3 basketball is fast paced. It requires quick thinking and really elite defensive IQ. So it is going to change how players play the game. And I think it'll be interesting for fans to see those shifts and kind of the different types of talents that these players have in the 3-on-3 setting.
Honestly, I've played basketball my whole life, not competitively, because I obviously was a professional tennis player. I stopped playing basketball like in high school, probably my junior year, just to focus on that. But I've always played it as as an exercise tool, right? Find games, play outside, play in different gyms, whatever. LA Fitness when I was out in LA and all that stuff. But 3-on-3 basketball is rough. It is all I'm saying is for anybody that plays for fun, like you go into a gym and you see 5 people out there and you go and they, oh, you want to run threes? Cool, we do it. And then after like 2 games, us old guys are just like, we're exhausted. And that's just half court. So I'm not comparing myself to any of these elite athletes who are probably in the prime of their physical condition. But I told you pre-show, the only thing I don't want to see tonight is kind of like a sloppy product. I want to see, hopefully it's within reason. I'm going to grade it on a curve, right? I'm just really curious how it looks on TV. Because basketball is a beautiful game to watch on television. So I wonder if you're going to see more individual gameplay in terms of like basketball stewardship, in terms of like breaking your opponent down. Are we going to see more pick and roll with that other person? Like, what are the defenses going to look like? I'm really fascinated by this model, in particular the fact that it's full court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I mean, there's another league there's another 3-on-3 professional league, right?
Yeah, it's the big 3. It's Ice Cube's league, I believe, right?
Yeah.
But that's half court, and that's
okay.
And they have some funky rules. Honestly, I haven't watched a ton of it. And mostly it's because it kind of reminds me of a half version of the TBT, where you see like a lot of alumni from different teams playing for that like $1 million prize on the men's side. And although we did have a Stars of Stores this year, so that was fun to watch for a little bit. But it also is, and I say this with it'd be like me going to play. No one wants to see 43-year-old Mark Zanetto play basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to see 40-year-old just name player there play basketball. You know what I mean? I want to see big time players. Like, so if everyone's like, in their 20s or 30s and like maybe they just don't play in a league anymore, and that's different. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes the TBT gets a little sad. Sometimes the 3-on-3 stuff gets a little sad. So this will be entirely different. It'd be like right now, to make a comp, right? You take the 36 best players in the NBA, and then they just started modified 3-on-3 full court. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea by Brianna Nafisa, for real.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? I didn't ask you this question. It wasn't something that we talked about pre-show. So, but it's about streaming, because this is going on Max, and I've literally been hammering home this idea of no matter what UConn does going forward, whether it's a merger with the ACC, whether it's going to the Big 12, take that out of it. Women's basketball in general, whether it's W, whether it's one league that decides to do this first, I think they should go all streaming. I not that I want to make people have to pay more money to watch their favorite sport, but that's where their money is. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think people realize that when you watch a football game on Netflix on Christmas Day, nothing changed about the broadcast. That was it was double dip, because you're paying for Netflix and you're paying for the advertising that they are showing you on television.
Right.
And if you do it kind of like really targeted, each model, each market, whether it's New York market, LA market, whatever, they can start to target market you who are watching it, because they have all of your information. So the businessman in me says that's where women's basketball should go. It should go all streaming and get like $1 billion or $6 billion for the rights. And then all of a sudden you're paying players a lot more money because the revenue is there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think for me, I mean, I don't even know how to watch TV that's not streaming really these days anymore. So I think that the challenge with streaming for me, and this is what, if it does go all streaming, I think that we need to solidify and sort of like centralize where it's happening, because like even now I'm racking my brain. I'm like, do I have Max? Do I need to ask my friend for a
Yeah,
password to Max? Like, so
that's
like all
true.
these all these different services, like I think it might be on my TV somehow, but I don't know. So it's the same thing with there's been a lot of chatter about like the NBA viewership and how they've switched to streaming, and how people are kind of, where do I find the game? And then it's like, can I go on League Pass, or is it not? Like, so I'm pro streaming. I think it's here. It's not even that's the future. That's how we consume media now. But you got to put it in a select amount of places so people can access it. That's my thing. And maybe they all need to find a way to work together and merge. I don't know how that works, but like
Yeah.
for me, it's like, it's just hard to navigate to like 8 different streaming services to watch a basketball game.
I'm with you there. I think what would be interesting, and I know I've kind of like hijacked the segment, but like I'm so pro that movement, because I don't want what either the UConn athletic program / the women's basketball as a whole to lag behind on the progress that they've made. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's maybe it's a league like this only. Maybe next year Unrivaled is literally just on Apple, right? And you have to subscribe to Apple. You pay your $7 a month, whatever it is, but you get all the games. And but then they target you with the marketing, and then they get double dipped on their side of it. And so that creates more revenue. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's however you can create more revenue. You're already seeing it. Like some games on the men's side are on Peacock, things like that. Like I think that there needs to be not just like 1 or 2, but like a big chunk of it, so that you can get more money back to the programs. That's my thought.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
All right, last question. What are your thoughts on them offering equity in the company to essentially kind of bolster? I mean, $200,000 is nothing to sneeze at. I'd love to make that much money a year, right? But it's an interesting model, because if this thing takes off, then every player is going to have phenomenal return on their investment.
It's huge. I think that it transforms the economy of women's basketball, because, traditionally players who were in the W had to go overseas in the off season, and actually for them the actual basketball season, right? Because it's not typical that basketball is a summer sport in the way it is in the WNBA. But I think that it's transforming the way that these women can make money, these athletes can make money, because ultimately part of the challenge with the WNBA has been it's slow to get to where it is now, where the highest paid player is making about $250,000, right? So every player in this league is getting that, and an equity stake. It sort of stabilizes someone's career. It means that they can actually invest and be present in that career, and not just be focused on the next opportunity in Turkey where they could get hurt and come back and not be available. So it's huge. I mean, I think it's fascinating that it's player run and participating in it. Kind of changes the dynamic of owner player that so many professional leagues have, because these players are also owners. So it's like a level of ownership. I think it's a model that we might see replicated over time as athletics continues to change.
Yeah, if you don't think LeBron James is thinking about this as he sees this, you're crazy, because that dude is always looking for some business opportunity. So would not be surprised if we see a men's version of this in the future, and we can thank Brianna and Nafisa for that. All right, that's the show today. Really appreciate T. Baker as always. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm Mark Snetto, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected, and to remember, it's not just about getting it done, it's about doing it in a way that it can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. And as always, go Huskies.